Hello, guys, and welcome to episode 17 of the Nourish and Strengthen podcast. I can't believe we're on episode 17. I seriously can't believe it. So, I have an awesome topic for you today. It's a top 10 list. We love top 10 list, right? And I'm going to be going over your top 10 macro tracking mistakes. So, these are things I see all the time that can actually really kind of mess up your progress and really make you feel like, I'm doing all the right things, but for some reason I'm just not seeing results and I can't figure out why. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about today. So really, really good topic. If you have fitness goals, specifically weight loss goals, but really just maintenance, muscle building, and you're tracking macros to achieve those goals, you got to make sure you listen to all 10. Okay. I'm super excited to dive into this topic with you. Real quick, last 7 days, I took those 2 weeks off of work, right? When Caleb came home, my kids were moving out. And then last week, man, it was like hot and heavy right back into the work situation. So much stuff going on. I love what I do, you guys. I really do. I absolutely love what I get to do every single day. It's so fulfilling. But I was pulling some seriously long days last week and I got super exhausted, but it was great. My heart was so full. It was a lot of fun. Last Saturday, we actually got majorly hooked up from our friend. We got second row 50-yard line tickets to the BYU game. We got premium food, seating, parking, all the fun things. We got to see Caleb and his friends. We got to go down on the field. It was so much fun. Anyway, so that was probably the highlight of last week. So let's go ahead and just jump on in. Top 10 macro tracking mistakes. Now, these are in no particular order, okay? I tried to rank them. I just thought it would be cool if I gave my favorites at the end, but I just couldn't do it. It was so hard, I couldn't do it. So these are in no particular order. So you got to make sure that you listen to all 10, okay? Number one, let's just jump right in. Number one, trying to do a recall. Okay, so what this means, what a recall means is you're tracking your macros, but you get kind of backed up throughout the day. You stop tracking as you go, you don't plan ahead, and it gets to be the end of the day and you're like, "Oh shoot, I didn't track anything I ate today. Let's see, what did I have for breakfast? Okay, I think I had this. What did I have for lunch? Okay, I'm going to plug this in here." Guys, don't do that. Listen to me. Don't do it because you will not remember the little things. And you'll notice throughout all of my 10 here that the little things make a really big difference. Okay, those little things can easily add up to 100, 200, 300, 400 calories, which will take you out of that calorie deficit if your goal is to be in a calorie deficit, and or make you gain weight without knowing why. Maybe you're thinking, I'm tracking macros, I'm at maintenance, I'm doing everything right, but why am I slowly gaining weight over time? These little tips will help with that, okay? So don't recall, all right? Ideally, you should be planning ahead, which we're going to talk more about that in a minute. But if you are not planning ahead, make sure you take 2 seconds, just 2 seconds to pull open your tracking app and just write down what you're eating as you go, as opposed to waiting until the end of the day and trying to do a recall. Okay, so that's mistake number one. Mistake number two would be going over your calories in order to hit each macronutrient. Okay, so let's talk about this really quick. So let's say you have some targets. Let's say your targets might be 120 protein, 55 fats, 150 carbs. I don't know. I just pulled that out of nowhere. Let's say those are your targets. I don't even know what those calories would be. Let me figure it out. Well, while I'm figuring this out, I'm going to teach you. Okay, so every gram of carbs has 4 calories. Okay, so if your carbs are supposed to be at 150, that's 600 calories from carbs. Every gram of fat has 9 calories. So 55 grams of fat is 495 calories. Add that to the 600 from carbs, we're at 1095 total. 120 protein. Every gram of protein has 4 calories. That's 480 from protein plus our 1095. Okay. Those examples, we have 1575 calories, okay? So let's say you are a little bit over in your carbs, a little bit under in your protein, and a little bit under in your fats. But let's say that to hit your fats and protein is going to put you at like 1700 calories, okay? Because you were a little over in your carbs. don't overeat the macros to hit the calories, okay? The number one thing of importance here, if your goal is fat loss, is being in a calorie deficit, okay? Second thing is hitting your protein. Those things are the two most important, all right? So maybe you might have wanted to get a little closer on your protein target, but don't overeat your calories to hit your fat and carbs, okay? Two number one most important things are your calories and protein, with calories being the top one, okay? The other thing is, if you are hitting your macros, but your calories are over, I've heard that. That can be a confusing situation to be in, right? Because you might be thinking, well, hang on, if a gram of carbs and protein have 4 calories and a gram of fat has 9 calories, how can I possibly be hitting my macros but over on my calories? So let me tell you how that happens. Food labels actually have about a 25% variance that they are allowed to fluctuate by when reporting calories on their labels. And so you may find some sneaky companies, especially this happens, it's all processed foods, of course. It happens when they're reporting like low net carbs. So what they'll do is they'll subtract the fiber from the carbs, and they'll only report the calories coming from net carbs. And so this happens a lot with like talk about a tortilla, for example. You might say, okay, this tortilla has 50 calories, but if you actually calculate out the math from the macros, it really should be like 85. Okay, so not a huge deal. I wouldn't stress over it, but that could be why your calories might be over or under when you're hitting your macros. Okay, so mistake number 2, as a recap, was going over calories in order to hit each of your 3 macros. Don't do that. Focus mainly on calories and then protein, okay? Mistake number 3 is not actually weighing your food and using measuring cups or eyeballing instead. So let me talk you through this, because so many people feel like weighing their food just feels more obsessive. And I want to kind of break that belief for you here. First of all, let's talk about why. So let's use peanut butter as an example. You're probably like, no, I don't want to talk about peanut butter. I don't want to talk about how small a serving of peanut butter is. It's very sad. I know, it's very, very sad, but it deserves to be talked about. So 1 tablespoon of peanut butter is 100 calories, or 95, 90 to 100, depending on the brand. But let's just say I call it an even 100. And that tablespoon should weigh 16 grams. Okay, you can see this on any food label. It's right there, very obvious. But what happens if you take a tablespoon, measuring spoon, scoop up that peanut butter, give it your best eyeball, look and see, try to make sure that that's leveled off. Most people won't even try that. Most people will just do a tablespoon and it'll be rounded. And if you were to go to weigh that, it could very commonly weigh anywhere from 20 to 24 grams. Now you might be thinking, oh my gosh, why do you have to overthink it so much? That seems like so anal. And yeah, in isolation, sure, it probably wouldn't be a big deal. But if you're getting an extra 40 to 60 calories or more from that peanut butter, and then you're also doing the same things for 5 other things you eat that day, you could very easily be not in a calorie deficit when you think you are. Okay, so here's the thing, guys. You should not be in a calorie deficit forever. This should be a short period of time. It should be a very planned period of time where you are going to be disciplined and you're going to be on track in that calorie deficit and see the best results you possibly can, so that it does not have to trickle on for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. I mean, of course, it depends on your goals, but you just want it to be as short as possible for your goals, okay? So if you are all in on this fat loss thing, right? Why wouldn't you try to be as exact as you possibly can? If you're trying to lose fat, you're tracking your macros, why wouldn't you try to be exact to see the best results you can, as opposed to eyeballing things, using measuring cups that aren't very exact? I actually prefer a food scale because you don't get as many things dirty. You don't have as many dishes to wash because you put your bowl on the food scale, you add your ingredient, you zero it out, you add an ingredient, zero it out, right? As opposed to, okay, I need the half cup measuring cup, and I need the 1 tablespoon, and I need the 1 cup and the 3rd cup and whatever. And then all of a sudden you have all these measuring cups to wash. Like, womp womp. That's the worst, right? So guys, just weigh your food. Weigh your food. It's so easy. You don't have to do it forever. I'm talking about if you're tracking macros, if you're in a calorie deficit, you might as well be as precise as possible, see the best results you can, and then get out of that deficit, right? Okay. The other thing I hear a lot is, oh, I've just been eyeballing things because I tracked for 3 weeks and I don't really need to keep tracking because I know what a tablespoon of peanut butter looks like, or I know what, um, you know, 60 grams of avocado looks like, or whatever. Guys, that is totally fine in maintenance, totally fine. But like I said, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're in a deficit, you got to be as precise as possible to be able to get in, get out, and then you can loosen things up. Okay. Okay. Mistake number 4 is adding back food to account for calories burned in workouts. Now, some tracking apps will actually have that be a default. So I want you to go into your settings and turn that off. Okay. Couple reasons why here. Number 1, there's no way to know how many calories you burned in that weightlifting session. And really, when it comes to weightlifting, the calories burned in the weightlifting session are really nothing compared to the calories burned, as you recover from that session and just from the building of muscle over time from lifting in general. So you don't really want to worry about how many calories did I burn in that 3-mile run or in that spin class or in that weight training session. There's no way to know. So don't guess. I promise you're going to overestimate if you try to guess. Don't look at your Apple Watch and think, okay, well, my Apple Watch says that I burned 3,500 calories today, so I'm going to eat 3,500 calories today. Don't do that. I promise you'll gain weight. It will not get you where you want to go, okay? So the other reason is we want our workouts actually to build into that calorie deficit, right? And so if you're eating back those calories, you're kind of like spinning your wheels a little bit in a sense, right? So when any trainer you talk to, any coach, if you're working with my team, when we give you macros, that is accounting for your activity. That is us knowing what your workouts look like, what your overall lifestyle activity looks like, and taking that into account when we set your macros. So don't add food back from the calories burned in your workouts, ever, okay? Mistake number 5 is forgetting to track or not tracking those pesky little BLTs. Now, what are BLTs? BLTs stands for bites, licks, and tastes. And if you've been following me for very long, you know I talk about this a lot. What these are, I'm going to give you some examples here. What these are is you're making your kid a peanut butter sandwich and you lick the knife instead of putting it into the sink, okay? Maybe you're at work and there's a candy dish on the front desk and you grab a Hershey Kiss as you walk by the candy desk. Maybe you're making dinner and you're having some bites of things as you're making dinner. These are BLTs. They are calories that seem inconsequential in isolation, okay? By themselves, sure, that 25-calorie Hershey Kiss is not a big deal at all. The big deal comes when it happens a lot, and that's kind of how you live your life, is by snacking all the time and grabbing for things without even thinking about it, because these are calories that don't add to your satiation because they're just little nibbles here and there. They don't add to the satisfaction from a meal. They end up making you have smaller meals because you've already snacked so much throughout the day, okay? So, I mean, ideally work on that. If it's a problem for you, I would focus on trying to not have as many BLTs. But if you're having them, you got to make sure you track them, okay? It does get tricky when it's like, well, I don't know how much peanut butter I licked off the knife, right? That's when it's better to maybe not lick the knife. Maybe you grab a paper towel, clean it off, and then put it into the sink, or just rinse it off in the sink, right? But the Hershey Kiss, the candy, the this, the that, track it, okay? At the very least, if you're gonna have it, you gotta track it. And that's why it's so important not to do that recall that I talked about in mistake number 1, because you're gonna forget those little things, especially when they're taken mindlessly. You don't even hardly know you're doing it, right? You just grab and you consume and you move on. You don't think about it. You're gonna forget to track it, okay? Mistake number 6. Now this is interesting, okay? This is an interesting one. Macro tracking mistake number 6 is actually tracking every single macro. What? I thought we were talking about tracking macros. Why are you saying we shouldn't track every single macro? Okay, you guys, this is a little secret. Okay, maybe it's not, but there's a lot of research out there that shows that as long as you're in a calorie deficit and as long as you're hitting your protein needs, it doesn't really matter if your extra calories come from carbs or fats. Now, the exception, I was like, wait, exemption? No, the exception would be any medical issues, if you have diabetes, if you have high blood sugar, yes, you're going to want to focus maybe on lower carbs, higher fat until that's resolved. But if you're healthy, okay, it doesn't really matter if you're in a calorie deficit, hitting your protein. It doesn't really matter if your extra calories come from carbs or fats, okay? So 90% of the time in my coaching company, we just assign a protein and a calorie target. You know what that does, you guys? That allows you to have so much more freedom with food choices. It allows you to really listen to your body, listen to your cravings, eat what you want, eat what you're feeling like in the moment, what you have available. If you want to have more of a high fat, lower carb day, go for it. If you want to have vice versa, a higher carb, lower fat day, totally fine. As long as you're hitting your calories and your protein, you're good. And so this just really takes away that whole macro Tetris stress that you have at the end of the day when you're like, oh man, I am 15 grams of fat over and 50 grams of carbs under, and I've hit my protein and I don't know what to do. And oh my gosh, how on earth am I gonna, do I hit my carbs? I've overeaten on my fat. It's just so stressful, right? This makes macro tracking so much easier. So I would try it, guys. And if you're like, I don't even know how to do this, like, I don't even know what you're talking about, Lindsay, reach out to me on social media, you guys. I think my coaching program will be perfect for you because we teach you how to do this and we hold your hand and we guide you, answer your questions, and make it just feel so, so simple. Okay. So shoot me a message if you have any questions about coaching on social media and we'll chat about it. Mistake number 7 is not pre-planning your meals, okay? So this is something we talk about a lot when it comes to hitting macros. Whenever I have someone tell me I'm struggling to hit my macros, the first thing I say is, are you tracking in advance? Are you planning it the night before? And they always say no, because here's the thing. If you take 10 minutes the night before to plug in your breakfast, your lunch, your snacks, your dinners, whatever, and then you can see, oh my gosh, my protein is actually really low for tomorrow. Let's go through and actually increase those eggs, increase that turkey, whatever, make these modifications and adjustments in advance. Then the next day, all you got to do is follow it. The hard work is done, right? But if you're going throughout your day and tracking as you go, I mean, even the most experienced macro tracker is going to struggle to hit numbers if you don't plan in advance. Okay, so in the beginning, it might take maybe 15 minutes in the beginning, but it's going to be so fast. Once you get to the point where you're eating the same things every day, they're popping right up to the top of your tracking app. It's going to take you like 5 or 6 minutes, you guys, the night before. And this is a tool that will set you up for success the next day. It is key. Okay. All right. Mistake number 8 is giving up too soon. I talk to so many women on social media who say, I tried macro tracking and it was so hard, or it got overwhelming, or I'm so busy, like just all these excuses, right? Go into it expecting it to be hard, expecting it to be time consuming and overwhelming for about 2 weeks, okay? From talking to so many people, 2 weeks is about that amount of time where it just clicks and it feels easier and it gets faster and you're like, oh my gosh, I finally get this. I'm actually getting it, okay? So if it hasn't been 2 to 3 weeks, don't give up. Okay. I mean, even if it has been 2 to 3 weeks, still don't give up. But big mistake I see is people try it for 1 or 2 days and they throw in the towel. Okay. So don't do that. We got 2 more here. Mistake number 9. This is a big one, is not being consistent every day of the week. Okay. So on the weekends, if you're going off track, and this is not counting a planned untracked meal or cheat meal or free meal or whatever you want to call it, but let's say it's a Saturday and your day is not going as planned and maybe you had too big of a breakfast or whatever. It wasn't what you wanted. The mistake that people make is stopping tracking. Okay. They throw in the towel and they think, I'm already over. I'm just not going to track today. Okay. That's a mistake. Don't do that. Still track what you eat because all information is good information, especially if you're working with a coach. The coach needs to know exactly what you're doing and what you did to give you the results that you got. Okay. Not staying on track and the results that come from that is just as important of information as staying on track and what comes of that. Okay. So when I say not being consistent every day of the week, I'm referring to consistency with tracking. Okay. Now, If your coach has you taking an untracked meal where you can go to a restaurant or have a family meal where you're not worrying about tracking and how much of this did I have and yada yada, that can be stressful when you don't ever have a break from it, right? So not counting that, but don't try not to throw in the towel on the weekend and only track from Monday to Thursday, or make sure you don't. Another thing I see is I only tracked until like dinner, and then I kind of stopped and I kept eating throughout the day, but I didn't really track everything. So consistency, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, is really, really key. Notice I'm not saying perfection on your macros. I'm saying consistency with tracking. Okay. And mistake number 10 is not learning how to guess and estimate. Okay. This is a mistake that I've made a lot in the past, and I hear about it all the time. So let me kind of paint a picture for you. Maybe you are at a restaurant or a potluck or something, and you're estimating your food and you're giving it your best guess. Okay, so maybe it's like, okay, I have lasagna or a piece of pizza or something like that. Let's say it's lasagna just for something to talk about. So I have a 3" by 3" square of lasagna. I'm going to go into my tracking app. I'm going to guess because I don't know the macros exactly of it. So what I usually recommend, tangent, is if you don't know the exact macros on what you're eating, find one in the middle. So log onto your app, search up lasagna, meat lasagna, or whatever, and don't take the highest, don't take the lowest. Find one right in the middle and just use it. So the problem people have here is when they do that, they find their entry, they're like, okay, here's my 3" square piece of lasagna. 3 inches is kind of small. I don't know, whatever, however much lasagna. Here's my macros. And then here's what happens. Here's what happens later in the day. Someone brings out some cookies or something, and you're like, well, I don't know if my macros tracked for that lasagna were totally accurate. So I'm just going to have this cookie and not really track it, because we're going to assume that those lasagna macros were not accurate. And so I'm going to just kind of buffer that a little bit and have this and this. And then pretty soon you start picking in things and you think, oh, well, that whole meal was not accurate in my tracking because I didn't know exactly what was in the lasagna. And so it kind of makes you just kind of throw in the towel for the whole rest of the day when you can't be exact. Okay, so learning how to estimate and moving on is a skill. And that's a mistake that people will make, is estimating and then assuming it wasn't accurate and throwing in the towel for the day. Okay, so when you estimate like that, you take that as is what it is. Okay, so even if you didn't know if there were 500 calories in that piece of lasagna, you're going to assume that's 100% correct, and you're going to keep tracking the rest of your day as normal. Does that make sense? I know that was kind of a confusing one to talk through, but not learning how to estimate and guess is a mistake for sure. So those are our top 10 macro tracking mistakes, you guys. If you're listening to this and you're like, gosh, that seems like super stressful, like, let me go back to the beginning. If you're tracking macros to try and reach a fitness goal, I do not think people need to track macros forever. I don't think you should. I don't track macros unless I'm trying to reach a goal. You should try to be as exact as possible when trying to reach that goal so that you can get in, reach the goal, and then move back to maintenance, flexibility, a normal life. Okay, so that's kind of my little disclaimer on that one. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys had some eye-opening, like, aha moments. I want to remind you as well, I'm doing a contest. Okay, I'm giving away $100 to somebody who leaves me a 5-star rating and review. And I got a lot of reviews when I launched the podcast, but there haven't been a lot more recently. I know it's kind of a pain to actually click in and leave a review. So I started this review contest a week ago. There have been no reviews in the last week, which is totally cool. I'm just pointing out that you have a pretty good chance of getting this $100. So click on over on Spotify or Apple, wherever you're listening, hit the rating, but I don't see your name if you just hit a rating. So you got to leave a review as well so that I can contact you if you're the winner. So let's go do that. Go click over right now, leave that rating and review. I would appreciate it so much. As always, if you enjoyed this podcast, let me know on social. I'd love to hear from you and chat with you. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you guys next week.